Hi, hello everyone, this is the Promontory channel. Today we'll take apart this engine. This is a MAN D2876LF09 with 420 horsepower. This engine was purchased in Tayuma. And now I'll tell you the background. A subscriber contacted me asking to assemble a replacement engine. So the person is currently working with his vehicle. It has its original engine, but it's already in need of repairs. And basically the person just wants to assemble a rebuilt engine, so to speak, then just remove his own engine and install this one. So we were initially looking for an engine for repair. Since everything must be disassembled, checked for defects and new parts purchased, we specifically searched for an engine requiring repairs, and we found this kind of engine for 150,000 rubles. This engine doesn't have a fuel pump, so we'll need to look for a fuel pump, and it also doesn't have a fan or a hydraulic clutch. Everything else seems to be complete. The clutch is in place, the turbocharger is in place, and the starter. Oh, and there's no alternator either. So, as far as I know, this engine has a problem with the crankshaft. There might also be an issue with the engine block. That is, the bearings got welded, as I understand it, the main ones. And the crankshaft is going to be scrapped and replaced. The block might need repair or also replacement. Basically, that's all the information I have about this engine. So I don't know how it was running, its mileage, when it was last repaired or anything like that. I don't know any of that. So what immediately catches the eye is this. We see that all the parts are this black color. Well, not exactly black, more like graphite. Valve cover, turbocharger and similar parts. So basically the engine block, but the oil pan and the flywheel housing are red. So it's possible that this engine was repaired at some point. They installed parts from another engine. Also, I can immediately see that there's a new turbocharger installed. Well, at least it was installed not too long ago. We can see that it hasn't even rusted completely yet, considering that this engine was lying outside. So that's all the information I have about this engine. I'm required to do the standard task, disassemble and inspect it for defects. We do some things ourselves first, bro, and some things we send out to an outside machine shop. So there will probably be compressor repairs, pump repairs, and bearing replacements here. Well, basically everything as usual, everything standard. So let's start disassembling. We remove as usual, starting here with the tubes, hoses, and so on. Then the manifold, cylinder heads, and the clutch cover. Basically, we're taking it apart and checking the condition of the engine. What we need to do with it, what kind of work is required. We can see the exhaust manifold is installed without gaskets. The flywheel definitely needs to be replaced because there's about 1.5 millimeters of wear here. The clutch cover is also in bad condition and the disc is in bad condition too. So we need a complete clutch kit. Flywheel, clutch cover, disc, bearing. The bearing installed is narrow, we'll be installing a wide one. So it looks like the water pump is actually new. I'll probably just clean it and we won't do anything else. There's not even any rust here. The impeller looks good. Basically, it's barely been used at all. So we got lucky with the water pump. Some of the bolts were really hard to unscrew, and you can see what they look like inside. Everything here is clogged up, all seized up and rusted. I don't know if that's carbon buildup or rust. And there are several bolts like that, maybe about 10 of them. Let's take a look now at the head and the block. So I already have a rough idea of why all this is happening, why the bolts seized up. So it turns out we have a leak between the heads. The exhaust gases were passing through the gasket. That is, we can see everything is black here and everything is black here. The exhaust gases were passing through the gasket, and as a result the carbon deposits were clogging these bolts. The exhaust gases were leaking because the cylinder liner projection was made incorrectly. That is, the liner, in my opinion, is either level with the block or even below the block level. That is, most likely they either didn't install the adjustment rings or installed the rings incorrectly. And our liner has very low sealing. It's not the way it should be, and because of that we see this situation. Well, it's clear that something was done to the engine not too long ago. I mean, we can see that the cylinder heads were machined with the liner. I'm looking at it and there's practically no wear. So I immediately decided to measure the protrusion of the liner above the cylinder block, just to see if I'm right or not. I set up the indicator, we see that the block is at 0, then we move it to the liner minus 0.10 millimeters. Block is at 0 minus 0.10 millimeters. It's assembled completely wrong. The liner sits below the block, so there's no sealing at all. The exhaust gases go between the cylinder heads, leak through, and also get into the head mounting holes where the bolts are. All the bolts are clogged with carbon deposits. The block is at 0 minus 0.10 millimeters. It should be plus 0.10 millimeters. That means the liner is a whole 0.20 millimeters lower than it should be. So we can see the engine was taken apart. That is, we can see they disassembled it, looking for the cause. And then, apparently, they just put it back together, just assembled it. We can see that the oil pickup is just lying in the oil pan, and also, as I showed, the manifolds are installed without gaskets and so on. So, about the bearings. The bearings, we have a 0.25 repair size, and it's unclear whether they installed new ones or if they were old, because there's already a lot of wear and a lot of metal shavings here. That is, it's hard to tell now. I also don't see the year made. Continued. So the third cylinder, the third connecting rod journal, we can see the bearings are damaged. That is, everything is welded there, ground up, overheated. But it moves freely for us, except the crankshaft feels stuck somewhere. So we must have spun main bearings elsewhere too. Is it this one? Yes, this main bearing is also spun.
Be continued.
So we can see that all the main bearings are stuck. That means we had oil starvation. I removed the oil pump. There's a 34 there, and it's an old one. So maybe it wasn't replaced during the repair. There were some issues there. Maybe problems with the traditional valve. Maybe there were problems with the heat exchanger, the oil radiator. So there was some kind of problem with the oil, and it turns out the whole repair went down the drain. Also, I showed that the sleeves were installed incorrectly. You can So in theory, if the sleeves had been installed correctly, if the oil pump had been replaced with a new 43rd one, then I think the engine would still be running, most likely as an option. The main bearings are 0.25, which is their size. Yeah. Yes, we can see the bearing shells have spun in the block continuation. Well, we can see that absolutely all the bearing shells have spun and welded themselves. The crankshaft is definitely a write-off, and I think the block is too, since every journal, not just one or two, is damaged. And the center thrust bearing has also spun, which is very bad.
To be continued. To be continued.
The locating tab is sheared off and the bearing shell has spun. It was welded both to the shaft, and there were scratches along the block, and we can also see scratches on the side walls of the housing. Alright, next we take out the camshaft. We can immediately see the first cam lobe is chipped. That is, it's worn down. You can see that the height is gone. You can see that it's chipped. Well, and obviously the lifters will be in about the same condition. Let's take a look at the lifters right away and see what condition they're in. So, the lifters also need to be replaced. So the engine is disassembled. Let's sum it up. Well, basically just as expected, the crankshaft needs to be replaced, the camshaft needs to be replaced, and the block needs to be replaced. Basically that's why the engine was bought, so we would have a complete set. Well, as a bonus we also got a new pump and a new turbo. Of course, everything still needs to be cleaned and checked. But at first glance, that's how it looks. Let me remind you, the engine was bought for 150,000 rubles. Besides, our turbo is smaller. Right now, that's the only one we have. Such a turbo probably costs about 70,000 or 80,000 rubles. So the turbo and the pump together are already around 100,000 rubles, give or take. So basically the engine fully lived up to all expectations. Basically, that was the plan all along. So what are we going to do? As I already said, the block will be different, the crankshaft will be different, the camshaft will be new, and the piston assembly will be new. Well, accordingly, the bearing shells will be new, the lifters will be new, the camshaft bushings will be new. The cylinder heads, at first glance, are in good condition. Well, we'll take them apart and check them, possibly replacing the valve guides and replacing the valve. They might need to go to surface grinder. We need to see what kind of damage this incorrect installation of the sleeves has caused. Well, that's okay. We'll get to that later. So the compressor will also be repaired. The turbocharger might be sent for inspection. Well, I don't know yet. We'll see about the turbocharger. I can't say anything for now. I'll clean the pump. The injectors will also be sent for inspection, possibly for repair. And we also have a problem with the fuel injection pump. So we need to look for a fuel injection pump for 420 horsepower. That's quite a rarity, you could say. Everyone wants an engine with a mechanical throttle cable rated at 420 horsepower. That's why such pumps are in demand. We'll keep looking. So we'll also have a new clutch, flywheel pressure plate, disc bearing, and we'll also have a new 40 3-oil pump. Everything as usual. So next we'll have the assembly of this engine, then I'll paint it. I also plan to do a test run on the bench, so basically everything as usual. I'm starting the assembly. I've already done almost all the preparatory work. So the block is ready. Almost everything on the rack has already been washed, cleaned and sandblasted. There's the oil pan, the cover and so on. The cylinder heads are also ready. Well, to be precise, they've been washed and sandblasted. They were on the surface grinder. All I have left to do is lap the valves and assemble them. Engine was purchased for 150,000 rubles and well, the seller immediately said that the block and the crankshaft need to be replaced. And we bought that engine with the intention of replacing the block and the crankshaft. So, when we disassembled that engine, it turned out that it had a new turbocharger. I mean, a brand new turbocharger from Mal. In my opinion, that engine only ran for a few thousand kilometers. It didn't even finish the break-in period, so I just cleaned and blew out the turbocharger. Now, I'm going to install the studs here. Basically, we're working on the turbocharger. Also, that engine had a new water pump installed. Also absolutely new. It only ran for maybe 1,000 kilometers. That's it. So considering there's a new turbocharger and a new water pump, that's already around 100,000 rubles, give or take, yeah. And the engine was purchased for about 150,000 rubles, so basically that's quite a good price. Well, and as I already mentioned, there were mistakes made during the assembly of this engine. You can see that people tried. Apparently they were trying to do the job properly, but apparently due to lack of experience, it didn't quite work out for them. Well, let's say the mistakes were minor. This exhaust outlet to the turbocharger was installed without a gasket. The bolts were tightened and an asbestos cord was just wound in a circle. You can see from the imprint how it looks. And the bolts were tightened. Also, for example, in this place there were no studs installed. Bolts were installed, although we should have studs here. With these 17mm bolts, you can't get a box and wrench on them, so you can't tighten them with an open-end wrench either. Well, these are just small mistakes. They're not really critical. They don't affect the work much, right? But still, well, and there were also, you could say, critical mistakes made during the assembly of this engine. Specifically, the protrusion of the liner above the cylinder block was adjusted incorrectly. In other words, the liners were set too low. They were lower than the block by, I think, a tenth, 1.5 tenths, or maybe 2. I don't remember exactly right now. Also, the oil pump wasn't replaced, which led to scoring of the bearings and basically engine failure. So now we're starting the assembly. I've already done almost all the prep work. Like I said, I didn't really bother filming all of that this time. So what else do we have? What's the problem? We ordered a camshaft. We have to wait up to 4 months for the camshaft. It's already been about a month and a half, something like that. So I don't know, there's no news about the camshaft yet. So the engine might be stuck for another month, maybe even 2. Well, I decided to just assemble everything that I can for now. Specifically, I'll install the sleeves, the crankshaft and the pistons. I'll put the front cover on, for example. I can install the pump there and so on. I might even install the cylinder heads as well. In other words, I want to assemble it as much as possible. And then, when the new camshaft arrives, well, accordingly now I need to replace the bushings and install new ones. Otherwise, it will be really inconvenient later. And then, when the new camshaft arrives, I'll install the lifter, install the new camshaft, and then close up the cover under the house. That part will take about 2 or 3 days of work to fully assemble the engine. Alright, let's get started with the assembly. Now, there will be some footage of the preparation work. For example, I'll finish working on the turbocharger. I need to install and tighten the studs here. I need to clean and install these fittings for the oil supply and oil drain. I also need to clean and sandblast this one here. I need to install a proper gasket here. So for now I'm working on the turbo. Next, I'll probably work on the cylinder heads. I'll need to assemble the heads, and I also need to assemble the compressor. I already have almost all the parts for the compressor, so there's plenty of work to do even without the camshaft. Alright, let's start assembling. Let's go. So, I've installed the turbo on the manifold. The manifold is already cleaned and prepared. The turbo is also prepared. Here's this outlet. So the studs are new, the nuts are new, and the gaskets are new. I've already installed the oil feed, oil drain, and the pipe. Well, I'm preparing all of this so I can paint it all together with the same paint. So now I'm also going to install this fitting on the air manifold. I also replaced the rubber seal here with a new one and installed it. This is how it gets installed. So I unscrewed this fitting which is the air supply to the air compressor. Well, then we'll see on the spot how it should be positioned and lock it in place. So, I also unscrewed this plug, checked the condition inside, cleaned it, and also replaced this plug. So this plug was screwed in here. You can see it's kind of, well, it's not really clear. I see there's some kind of thread inside here. It seems something is screwed in and something is cut off. And, well, I cleaned it in the sandblasting cabinet. And when I started blowing it out, all of this just flew apart. I don't know, some kind of valve. So, it was crimped here. I just put some air in here and everything flew out of this plug. I found 2 washers. Some springs came out and another washer flew out too. For 100 basically you won't find it. So, why am I telling you this? Because of a plug like this, you could end up needing engine repairs. If this had come off while the engine was running, it would have at least gotten into the impeller, at the very least. Well, it's also possible that pieces of the impeller or pieces of this washer could have gotten into the engine, into the cylinder. And then we would have had to remove the cylinder head, maybe replace the piston and so on. So, you see, sometimes from such a small thing, let's say I hadn't checked it, it could have caused a lot of trouble. At the very least, we could have ruined the turbocharger. That's how it happens sometimes, right? Such a small thing. If I hadn't checked, I would have seen the plug and left it. And then we would have had to replace the turbocharger. This is how it fits in. You see, I supplied air here and everything just flew up. So I installed another plug, put a washer in there and added a drop of thread locker. Maybe just a little. Может, немного не так объяснил, то есть we might have had an outlet for the breather, or rather gases from the breather were coming here, and they just put a plug here, meaning the previous owners just found some plug with the right thread and screwed it in. So it shouldn't be here. Alright, so I've already installed all the plugs in the oil channels. Also blew out the oil nozzles, prepared everything, and we definitely used thread locker, just a drop. Subtack. Thank you for watching. So the heaviest one we have is 3,582. That's the weight of the piston head. And the lightest one, I think, is 3,571. Well, overall, the difference is about 8 or 9 grams. This is the piston rings from the set. So this is just perfect for these pistons. So we immediately install the pistons onto the connecting rods. The connecting rods have already been machined. The piston pin bushing was replaced and machined. So basically everything is as usual. We install everything. So I installed the liners without the O-rings. I've already taken the measurements, and using the 6 liner as an example, I want to show on camera what the liner protrusion is. As we see, both the block and the sleeve are at 0. Sleeve 8.9, block 0. Sleeve 8, block 0. Sleeve 8, that means the sleeve protrusion is 8. 8.9, which is our upper limit for this engine. So I take out the sleeves and install new rubber seals. Well, and now we'll finally install the sleeves into the block. And we'll start installing the crankshaft. So So I was working on the cylinder heads just now. So here's what was done with the heads. I disassembled them, washed them, cleaned them in the sandblasting chamber, and took them to the surface grinding machine. So, as I mentioned, the engine was repaired not too long ago, and the previous repair, all the valves were replaced. So the valves are just in excellent condition. You can see that new valves were installed, so I marked them. Each valve is marked on its head, so we see the first, the second cylinder, third, and so on. The only thing is on this valve. The intake valve of the first cylinder had this kind of wear. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's wear in this spot. And the valve seat also has wear. Also, the guide bushing was worn out specifically on this valve. So I replaced two valves, one intake and one exhaust, one bushing, and I'll be installing new valve stem seals. That's it, all the other valves. 10 of them are still the old ones. I lapped each one in its original place, meaning each valve was lapped where it was installed. So now I'm installing new valve stem seals, putting in the spring, and then I'll be installing the cylinder heads onto the engine. So the cylinder heads are ready, I can install them. So I prepared the original German bolts, which you won't need to retighten later. You just tighten them once and that's it. You don't have to touch them again. I've prepared the bolts, prepared the gaskets, as usual, Perling. Don't use any others. All right, let's unpack the gaskets, install the heads, and get started. Currently, my engine looks unusual since we're assembling it without the camshaft. The heads are on, but there's no oil pan or covers. So, what else can I do while I don't have the camshaft? Now, I'll also install the front cover with the new oil seal. I'll also install the injectors, and maybe I'll install the fuel lines, the return line, and the intake manifold. That's basically it. I can't install anything else on the engine. I need to wait for the camshaft when I get the camshaft. So, it's already been more than 2 months. I don't know how much longer I have to wait. Of course, I'd like it to be faster. Well, I hope that in a week, maybe 2, maybe 3, I'll have the camshaft, and then I'll be able to assemble this engine, paint it, and start it up. So, also yesterday evening I painted the manifold and the turbo. Everything was already assembled here. Just to remind you, the engine was bought with a new turbo. It had only run a few hundred kilometers, maybe a couple thousand. So I have new gaskets everywhere here, new nuts, everything is cleaned up, everything was prepared, and you saw all of this in the video. I painted it with this red heat resistant enamel, rated up to 800 degrees. I also put new seals into these grooves, new rings, so the manifold is also prepared for installation. Now I'll set it aside and cover it so that dust and dirt don't get on it. So what else can I do with this engine besides what I've already mentioned? I can assemble the rocker arm. The E meaning we'll have a completely new rocker assembly. E shafts, stands, screws, nuts, and so on. So I can assemble the rocker arm, and I also need to assemble the compressor. The compressor is still in the wash. I need to clean it, sandblast it, and assemble it. I can also install a new radiator on the heat exchanger. I have all of that as well. That's it. So I still have a couple of days of work left on this engine. Then I'll pack it up, wrap it in plastic, tape it up, and put it away from the workbench until the camshaft arrives. Alright, so for now I'm working on the tasks I just mentioned. Let's get started. Subtitles by Dimitar Zok. So finally I'm continuing to work on this engine. It stayed in this condition for several months. I put it over there and covered it with cardboard on top. And it stayed like that since April. The last time I worked on it was in April. Right now, it's the end of June outside. It's summer. You could say it's practically the middle of summer. I started working on this engine in February. So that's February, March, April, May, June. It's the 5th month now. So what's the hitch? What's the problem? The whole problem was with the camshaft. So we were waiting for the camshaft. The supplier said to wait about 3 or 4 months. Well, that's pretty much how long we waited. But the most interesting thing is that they sent the camshaft and it turned out to be the wrong one. So you can imagine how we felt after 3 months. We waited 3 months for the camshaft. We opened the box and it's a camshaft not for the mechanical pump, but for the electronic throttle setup, which you could buy, I don't know, in about a week without waiting 3 months. So we sent that camshaft back, and by the time we figured everything out and finally got the camshaft we actually needed. Now we're going to open it up and install it. Yeah, so basically because of the camshaft our repair got delayed for about 4 months. Yeah. So now the camshaft. I'm unpacking the engine. I'll blow it out with compressed air. I've already prepared the cover to close it right away. It's ready to, well, actually everything was ready a few months ago. So in theory, I could have finished this engine back in April and sent it to the customer. The cover is ready. The oil seal is already installed. There's a new gasket here, a new flywheel. I've prepared the lifters right away, the cover bolts, the flywheel bolts. I'll also install the compressor drive gear and the timing gear right away. Well, basically everything is already ready. Over there on the shelf, those 3 shelves, all of that is from this engine as well, including the heat exchanger with a new radiator. So the compressor is after repair, the new power steering pump, the fuel pump after repair. Here I have the rocker arm, also new, already prepared and assembled push rods, bolts. Well, basically everything is completely ready on my end. Here, the tensioner pulley is new and the starter is after repair. So I'm starting the assembly. I think it will take me about 2, 3, maybe 4 days. I also need to paint it, start it up here on the table, then pack it and send it to the customer. That's it. So that's the amount of work we have. Let's get started. Biegorowa. So next I'll be closing the oil pan. I've screwed in 2 studs to use as guides. Then I checked the tightening of the main bolts, the connecting rod bolts, and the tightening of the counterweights. I checked that all my injectors are tightened, made sure the connecting rod cap matches the connecting rod itself, and checked the serial numbers on the caps. In general, I double checked everything again. Since I assembled it more than 2 months ago, I checked everything once more and made sure everything is fine here. Now I'll wipe here a bit. As we can see, some rust has appeared here. I'll degrease it. So I'm closing the oil pan, proofreader, Kulakova. Then the pump is installed, the pickup tube. The pickup tube is attached to these spacers, proofreader, Kulakova. These spacers match the thickness of this plate. Next, the second gasket is installed. And after the second gasket, the oil pan itself is installed. So I have also prepared the oil pan, washed it, degreased it, and blew it out. I haven't screwed in the drain plug yet, I have a new one. Once I install the oil pan, I'll put in the new plug. Alright, that's it. I installed the pump, tightened it, and put in a new pressure relief valve. All the bolts are on thread locker because the pump is a critical part here. Sometimes bolts come loose. I've had a few cases like that in my experience, so I always put the pump and all these oil pickups on thread locker. So I tightened the bolts, installed the bracket here. Also, first tighten these bolts, tighten the oil pickup to the pump itself, and only then tighten everything else. We tighten this bolt to prevent misalignment. Alright, now I'm installing the second gasket and putting on the oil pan. To be continued. I've installed the new rocker arm, adjusted the valves, set the clearances to 0.4 mm for intake and 0.6 mm for exhaust. Now we adjust according to the following procedure. Turn the crankshaft clockwise. We keep turning until the intake valve on the first cylinder opens. After the intake valve on the first cylinder opens, we find the top dead center on the first cylinder and adjust the valves. We adjust the first, second, third, skip the fourth and fifth, adjust the sixth and seventh, skip the eighth and ninth, and adjust the 10th. So we find the top dead center using the flywheel. The mark on the flywheel should be at 0 T1. And you can also check by the valve overlap, that is on the sixth cylinder, if one valve finishes closing and the other valve starts opening, that's the valve overlap. So on the first cylinder it's top dead center of the compression stroke and vice versa. If the first cylinder has valve overlap, then the sixth cylinder is at top dead center of the compression stroke. So after adjusting 6 valves, turn the engine clockwise 360 degrees, one full turn, and then adjust the remaining valves 4, 5, 8, 9 and 11, 12. So I've adjusted the valves. Now I'm going to close the valve covers. I've also already installed the fuel pump. We set the fuel pump at 15 degrees here. I set the mark at 14 degrees. So we also bring the first cylinder to top dead center. As for compression, I just explained it either by the valves or by the valve overlap on the sixth cylinder. Next, we move the crankshaft slightly back, which comes out to 15 degrees of the flywheel rotation. Then we install the pump. Here we check that the mark should be exactly in the middle. Also, this pump comes with a special jig. Basically, you put it on, the slot fits into the tab, and then we install the pump. So I tighten these 4 bolts. The new gasket, I put it on with sealant, loosen these 4 adjustment bolts a bit, moved it around slightly to adjust it, and then tightened this additional bolt, the pump mount. Well, that's it. The pump is installed. Next, I'll be installing the high pressure fuel lines, putting on the return line, and then we'll put the valve covers on. I'll also close the air manifold today, and now I'll install the compressor as well. As I already showed, the compressor is ready. The compressor after repair is lying here on the table, and a new power steering pump has been installed. I've also prepared the bolts and pipes, so now I'll probably install the compressor first, then I'll move on to the valve covers and the pipes here. Basically, everything I just mentioned will also install this one. The breather outlet will also be new. Basically, everything is almost finished. There's just a little bit left. So let's continue assembling the engine. So I installed the engine in its working position. Installed the tensioner pulley here, installed the hydraulic clutch drive, installed the pump outlet here, the heat exchanger, a new filter, and put in the starter, which is the original one from this engine, just so I could paint it to match the color of the engine. Now when I start it up, I'll put in my own starter, the local one that stays in the workshop. So now I'm going to paint the engine, tighten everything up, and put in the plugs. Here, for example, there's the oil channel. I seal off the exhaust manifold, seal off the sensors somewhere, the grooves. I cover all that with tape, paint the engine, and then I'll install the exhaust manifold with the turbocharger. The manifold is already prepared as well. So the engine is painted. This time I use this kind of paint, engine enamel, silver color, basically a special heat resistant engine enamel. I used 5 cans for this engine. Well, you could say I didn't spare the paint, so of course you could paint it more economically. 4 cans would have been enough, and if you spread it thin, maybe even 3 would have been enough. So I'm installing the manifold, the turbo, pouring in the oil, and then we'll start the engine. I've installed the manifold, and now I'm putting on the second part. This is what it looks like for 2 cylinders. So it's also painted with special heat resistant paint. This paint is specifically for engines, and this paint is for manifolds, like for stoves and so on. I've installed new sealing rings. Each groove gets 2 rings. So here we have 4 rings. And I do all this by applying the ceramic paste in a ring like this. So I'm just showing this because there was a comment under one of the videos asking, why did you coat the manifold seal with sealant? Well, I'm showing that this isn't sealant, it's a special paste. It's for high temperature areas. It's a separating lubricant. Basically it works up to 1500 degrees. Well, basically you could actually not use it, but things will stick together less, rust less, and so on. So I'm applying this ceramic paste lubricant, and then I'm installing the second part of the manifold. So it's already the next day for us. I removed the batteries, took out the diesel fuel, the engine on the pallet, made these 4 braces at the corners, put something under the cover and under the pallet. I also made supports in 3 places. Well, in general, that's it. The engine is securely mounted on the pallet. So I also closed up this opening here so that nothing gets in. I also closed off the fuel system, put plugs everywhere here. In general, that's it. My engine is fully prepared for shipping. He also drained the oil. The engine has no oil. He drained it from the oil pan and also from the oil filter. So that's how I installed it and strapped it down. I don't put the outlet here. At this spot we have an outlet from the turbo. I also don't put the breather. I put all of this right here under the engine. Here we have the breather. Here we have some other tubes left and so on. I also put some chemicals there. Automotive care products. A gift for the subscriber from the sponsors. Well, that's basically it. Now I'm going to pack the engine, wrap it with stretch film. And tomorrow, probably the engine will go to the subscriber. Well, actually to the shipping company first, and then it will go to the subscriber. So, I'm not making a crate. This engine arrived without a crate. I think it was just lying on its side like this on a pallet. I'm not making a crate. I checked and don't have the material, so it will just be wrapped in stretch film. Well, I think they'll still make a crate at the shipping company anyway. I think the shipping company won't accept the engine without a crate. So that's how our repair turned out. Another long drawn out repair. This engine was in my workshop for 5 months, maybe even longer. Well, situations can be different, it varies. With this particular engine we had a problem with the camshaft. Well, actually when I took this engine in for repair and made an agreement with the customer, I immediately told him that the engine would be ready around in June or July. But then it seemed like one person refused the repair, and so I started working on this engine in the spring, thinking I would finish it faster. So, well, as we can see, it turned out just as we agreed. That's it. So this is our repair of the Mandy 2866 engine, Mandy 2866 LF09 with 420 horsepower. I'll wrap up this video here. Thank you all for watching. Good luck to everyone and goodbye.